Good morning, Brother Will.
Good morning, Brother Rich. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing better than I deserve.
Awesome, awesome. Always glad to hear it. So we got quite the show today, don't we?
Yes, we do. Check your mic. I should have caught this before we went on. It
Hmm.
sounds like give me a mic
Little
check there.
check, check, check.
Hmm,
You know what? And now that beeping started in the background because my son spent the night somewhere else. Let me go take care of that. Otherwise, we'll have to listen to that for far
okay,
too
buddy.
long again. So sorry, guys.
All right. No worries, man. Mark is on from Australia. Good morning, Mark. Glad to have you. Today's show, we'll be talking a lot about the assassination attempt on the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. We've got half the show will be occupied by that. We're going to break it down in 6 easy steps. And we're also going to talk about economics as we always do. And let's see, looks like we got Will back on the show. There he is. Mark says, "Good morning, gentlemen." Good morning, Mark. Glad to have you here. Alan Kelly is on from occupied Virginia. Give me a sound check, Mr. Will.
Test 1 2 3 4 5 5 4 3 2 1. Is it a
Yep.
little echoey?
A little echoey, but that's
Yeah, I moved my desk here to a different spot because I finally finished tiling. Yay me! And I was hoping it was gonna be less echoey, but I'm afraid it's worse. I'm gonna have to find a better spot.
yeah. Let's see here. As I was just saying, Will, while you were gone, we're going to be talking about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump this morning. That'll take about half the show. I'm going to break it down for you in about 6 easy steps. And Will, as always, has our economic world affairs, financial report, etc., on the health and future vitality of these states united. And I guess let's just jump into that, man.
Yeah, man, let's do that. This will go pretty quick when we get to the meat and potatoes here. So the CNN Fear Greed Index up top, we're at 56. Been bouncing right between that high neutral, low greed type area, and the market's just been grinding upward. Um, I don't see anything changing that. Election year, everybody seems to be optimistic, and that's historically true. Whether it's the incumbent or the challenger going to win, usually people are pretty optimistic. Things are always going to get better. So I really don't see that changing till after the election, probably into 25, if it's going to change. We'll wait and see how things shake out. However, a good indicator for this is the Buffett indicator, named after Warren Buffett. And this comes from current market valuation, their chart of this. So what Warren Buffett does, he takes the country's GDP and divides that by the Wilshire 5000 index. And the Wilshire 5000 index, you've heard of the S&P 500, that's the top 500 companies. The Wilshire 5000 is basically every publicly listed stock. So this gives you a ratio. So if the stock market is very expensive compared to the GDP, that is his indication that the stock market is overvalued. And as you can see by looking at this, it is very overvalued. We are right at 2 standard deviations above the historical trend line. And if you look back over time, if we take out the COVID bump because of all the printed money, but even if we leave that in there, there's only been a few times we've gotten to 2 standard deviations. One of those was the .com boom, and yeah, nothing happened after that. Nope. And then we can go back to just prior to 1970, during the 1960s, and we know what inflation did after that, because again, there was a lot of money printing in there for the Vietnam War and the Great Society plans. So we're due for a big pullback here, guys. When that's going to happen, wish I knew.
Yeah, wish I knew too.
But better to be prepared and wait and see when things happen. So,
Mhm.
also so that's kind of the negative side of this. We can also use this as a tool. If you look at where it goes to 1 standard deviation below the historical trend, that's a really good time to go all in on the market.
Yeah.
So we can use this both ways. Right now it's a warning. We can also use it as a green light with the green lines down below there. So, and as you can see there through the 70s and 80s, it can stay below that trend line for a considerable period of time. Now, bear in mind, we didn't print money back then like we do now. So now every time there's a crisis, they print money like crazy and the stock market takes off. So we'll see how this one shakes out. They got to get inflation under control, or if they print money, it's going to be off to the races with inflation again.
Here we go again.
Yep, every time
Like
is
Groundhog Day.
Exactly, every time is slightly different, guys. So you got to look at the overall situation. So, all right.
Let's
So
welcome, but before we do that, let's welcome
yeah,
some folks on. We got
let's do
Alan
that.
Kelly, occupied Virginia. Mark is over there in Australia. Tony says, good morning, folks. Where's our points at this morning? Yeah, we'll discuss that in today's show. Will Rhodes says, good morning from Missouri, coin number 2269. If you want to find out about becoming a coined member of our preparedness community is the right decision for you and your family, please hit the links in today's show notes. We also have Will Parker, my good friend out there, and I will see you next month in Montana, Will. John Shriver is on from Yukon, Oklahoma. He is coin number 1919, says, stay safe and aware. Amen.
Yes.
Tina is on. Good morning, Tina. She has shared the show. Please share the show today, guys. If you do, I tell you what, I'll do a randomized drawing for all those that share, and somebody might just win a copy of On Violence and Varietals. Yeah, lucky you. Tony says, so why is the most important pertinent information to be released is the shooter's restricted party affiliation. We will talk about that. Today's show for the 10 folks watching us live is going to be broken into two parts. We're going to talk about the economic news, the financial news, where the markets are heading, what you can do to keep you and your family safer on that. And then we'll get into, I'm going to break down the shooting and for you in 6 easy steps. It's easy for everybody to understand. Dr. Gordon Botson is on in Ohio. And here we go.
Okay, and I'm going to make my part quick because the more important part is Rich's part of the show. So we see sentiment starting to turn here when you see headlines like this from The Hill. Is buying a home still worth it? And this is where people are getting frustrated. Home prices are obviously very high. Affordability is I believe it's an all-time low. It's not an all-time low. The only time it surpassed it was just prior to the housing crash, and not by much if that's the case. Still 80% of Americans say owning a home is part of the American dream. And it is still, for most people, the greatest wealth building part of their lives. And the arguments can be made about, does it really build wealth because you need somewhere to live? But the bottom line is, it's a great way for people to build wealth outside of other types of investments. It is a passive investment, if you want to look at it that way. Yes, you work on your home, but you're working on it to better your quality of life. If it's your primary home, you're not necessarily doing these things as an investment. So, so you've got 80% of people saying it's part of the American dream, but a whole new generation coming up going, I'd rather just rent. I can't afford it. Rents are coming down because multifamilies getting overbuilt. And on a month-to-month cash flow basis, renting saves them a lot of money. Problem is, at the end of a 2-year lease, all you have is a stack of receipts to show for it.
Yeah.
So that could come back to bite an entire generation. So
I had this conversation with my daughter just the other day. I said, you should have took advantage of it and bought a house when you first got married and interest rates were low.
Yep.
I said, and now you're screwed. You're still going to be written for a couple of years till they come down.
Yep. And there's a saying going around in the real estate realtor profession right now. It's marry the house, date the rate. So you marry the house, you buy the house, and you date the rate, meaning you can refinance it as it comes down. Well, that's great unless inflation remains sticky high for a while, like I think it's going to. When I say sticky high, I mean above 2%. The Fed's going to have to stay restrictive, and that's going to keep interest rates higher for longer. And if that happens, people tend to think things are going to happen quickly. When I say people, I include myself in that. And they think, oh, in 6 months we'll refinance and we'll get rid of this payment. Well, what happens is that stretches out to 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be an interesting dynamic to see how this plays out. And the realtors are having a harder and harder time selling that as rates have stayed up. So the general consensus is we got to get somewhere under 5% to really kick the housing market off. That's 5% on the 30-year mortgage. And we're still just under 7%. So it's a long ways to go. A couple of Fed quarter-point rate cuts aren't going to get that done.
No.
So it's going to take a while. I would think at least a year, if not longer, unless there's some sort of economic shock. And we almost
could have had Saturday. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's not just that pure economic side. To that end, guys, here's a long-term chart from the Federal Reserve, St. Louis. They make a lot of these charts. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, sometime just go on their website and start plugging in stuff. This is new privately owned housing units started. So this is housing starts. So this is when they actually break ground on it. If we start on the left hand side of this chart, it goes back further. I just did it from 1980. The peak happened to be the same in about 1984, and again in about 2006 there at 2.2 million housing starts. And we can see what happened after each one of those peaks. And then, of course, it went way down after the housing crisis, bottomed at about 09, and then slowly worked its way back up. And then our more current peak here, if you go, actually, let's stay on this one, 2021 there, and then it starts down after that. Here is what we're experiencing. I think that trend's going to continue because of interest rates. And these home builders are getting squeezed now. They've been able to play the game by giving discounts, but that seems to be coming to an end. So something to keep an eye on. If these housing starts keep going down, however, that will help keep home prices higher when people are still searching for a single family home, which may drive more multifamily. So we'll see how that shakes out with all that supply coming on the market.
Dr. Fuller is on, says hello from a motorcycle near Lynchburg, Virginia. And Dr. Fuller's book has dropped, Empathy for the Devil. It's available on Amazon. Dr. Fuller and I will be doing a show very soon. If you don't know, Empathy for the Devil is Dr. Fuller's account of his time at Camp X-Ray, Guantanamo Bay, interrogating battlefield detainees. It is a great book. I've had the pleasure of reading an advanced copy. You are going to love it. So if you want to check that out, Empathy for the Devil on Amazon now.
Awesome. All right. This is the same chart, just zoomed in from 06 to current day. And the reason I did this was just so we can see on that previous chart, because the timeline is expanded. It looks like the current decrease in housing starts is quite dramatic. As we can see, it isn't quite as dramatic as that previous chart made it look there from 2022 coming into 2024 here. But it is a consistent downward trend during that time. So I didn't want to make it look like it was just falling off a cliff, because that isn't the case. It's more of a gradual downhill slide, which the flip side of that means the media isn't going to catch on to it until it gets further down that slide. So we will see how all that shakes out.
Okay.
All right. Next one there.
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is a little bit of a segue. This is Saturday with the assassination attempt on Trump. So I think a lot of my take on that, once we knew that former President Trump was okay, was I actually switched over. I started off watching Fox News. I'll fully admit that. And then I went, I'm going to go see what MSNBC has to say. And I took what I thought was my rock bottom faith in media and took it even lower.
Okay.
And then I ran across some headlines like this. NBC's Chuck Todd makes explosive claim that Biden cabinet secretary told him 2 years ago that Joe can't run again.
Huh.
2 years ago. If this would have been somebody with an R behind their name in the White House and somebody told Chuck Todd that, it would have been on his show the next Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, you know, where the purpose of the media is to be a watchdog on government, right?
Well, you would hope,
but only if there's an R behind that name, right? So I see this as part of the ongoing slow-moving crisis here in America, is loss of faith in these institutions. Mm-hmm. To me, this is just another indicator of that. When you hit the next one there, brother.
Okay.
This is a Milwaukee radio station. It says it agreed to edit an interview with Joe Biden. Now, there were two questions that the Biden campaign did not like how President Biden handled those questions during that interview, and this radio host agreed to edit out those questions and answers, and then that's what they aired. So, again, I bet if it was somebody with an R behind their name, that wouldn't have happened.
Well, these are data points, you know.
Right.
Again,
So it's one.
Zappos.
Right. So, one Well, in the economic world, the one number is just a number. Two give you 2 points, you get a line. Three starts to make a trend.
Well, let's
And,
bring it to something that our community understands. Let's got a dope adjustment.
mhm,
I fire 3 rounds and then I make an adjustment. So once I
exactly.
get 3 data points, I'm ready to make an adjustment.
Right. Absolutely. And the more data points you get, the more you see the trend. You take the shooter out, right? Pardon
Yeah.
the pun with Saturday stuff, but you take the shooter out of that. You shoot a 10-round group. Now you got a good average, right? Well, how many
Mhm.
data points do we have for this, right?
Mhm.
Um, I came across this. I have no idea who this guy is, but
He's a
he
handsome
makes a
fella, I'll tell
great.
you that.
Yeah, he is. Um, he says, if anyone you know is celebrating what just happened, referring to the assassination attempt on President Trump, if you if anyone you know is celebrating what just happened, you need to remove them from your life immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't care. I don't like President Biden. I don't think he's doing a good job. But if somebody tried to kill him, I would not be celebrating that.
Yeah.
That
100%.
takes a pretty sick individual. So,
Yes. Agreed.
yep. So, um, and my wife pointed out after that assassination attempt, President Biden now has his excuse not to do any rallies, right?
I'm worried about bird flu, aren't you? I mean, I'm gonna
Well, there,
stay
there's there's the bird flu here, but prior to that, well, I mean, there's
in
crazy
Bonnet
people out
Clegg,
there,
right?
right? And
Mhm.
so, better safe than sorry for President Biden. So there's his excuse to keep out of the public eye, and now here's an excuse to alter how voting is done again, because this has just been ginning up over the last 4 to 6 months, and now you got poultry workers, humans, testing presumptively positive. I have no idea what that means for bird flu, but here comes the groundwork for it, right?
Mhm.
So again, we're seeing a trend.
Yeah. Don Bothwell is on. Says good morning from Northwest Montana. Don, hope you're doing well, sir. He is coin number 2270. Please like and hit that share button, folks. What is this?
I took this screenshot off of MSNBC here, obviously, and you can see this is post Donald Trump being shot. Okay, you can
Mhm.
see the blood on his face there. Let's go over there how they reported this. At the top, developing. Secret Service says Trump is safe after being injured at rally. Did he fall
So
down,
like he
go boom?
fell?
Yeah, did he
Oh
fall
yeah.
down, go boom? No, no. He luckily his head was turned at just that crucial moment. Um, and then the next one down here, Trump rushed off stage as shots fired at rally. That almost makes it sound like it happened like way over there somewhere,
Yeah. And I have
right?
some more on this too, by the way. I did
Okay,
this
awesome.
great minds think alike, Will. I was doing the same thing.
Excellent, excellent. And so it was like, well, how does that frame it? I bet if it was, Biden or Bernie Sanders or fill in the blank, they would have been, oh my God, you know what they would have said.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then the last one here, Trump rushed off stage at rally after pops that sounded like gunshots were heard. Not gunshots were heard, pops.
Oh no, no. Mm-mm.
So
Could have been a balloon popping. What do you
yeah,
know?
I'm sure. What was that movie with Clint Eastwood where he was on the Secret Service? Remember
Great
that one?
movie.
That was.
In the
What
line
was the
of
name of
fire.
that?
In the
Line of
line of
Fire.
fire.
Yep, yep. Great movie. Awesome
Mhm.
movie. So, and then I think this one. You read this one off for us. I thought this was awesome.
Can't today. I'm busy watching the season finale of the United States. And again, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's one of my autistic traits. When I'm uncomfortable, I just crack up because
Yep.
it's sad. I feel that way.
Well, it is laugh or cry, right?
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Exactly. So, yeah.
All right. You ready to get into it, brother?
Yeah, man. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you came up with. I know you worked on this for quite a while.
I did, man. It was consuming me. I had to back away from it, go jump in the pool for a while, come back, swim a few laps, and then get back on it again because I wanted to like this. These kind of things don't happen in isolation. So
Hmm.
to me, I looked at it like this is a 6-step process. Step one,
Okay.
plant the seeds for political violence. Step two, radicalize the useful idiots to violence. Step three, enact the violence. Step four, ineffectual government response to the violence. Step five, mainstream media misinformation campaign. Step six, act surprised, call for calm, and shift the blame.
Yep.
So we're going to look at each one of these
Okay.
as we go through it this morning. Tony says one read Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he fell. Yeah, we're going to get to that one.
Yeah.
Ryan Schuler is on. It's about hot and dry in North Texas. Thank you guys for being on. Please hit that share button before we jump into it. And let's get going here.
All right.
So, step one, plant the seeds for violence. This kind of stuff does not happen in a vacuum, folks. Robert Page, a political scientist at the University of Chicago, has studied American attitudes toward political violence since January the 6th attack on the Capitol by a pro-Trump mob, conducted a nationwide poll on the topic last month, and this just came out over the weekend. It found that 10% of those surveyed said that the use of force is justified to prevent Donald Trump from becoming a president. A third of those gave that answer said they also own a gun. 7%, and I would imagine those are left, left folks.
I agree.
Yeah. So 7% of those surveyed said they support force to restore Trump to president. Half of them said they own guns.
So let's think about that for a second, brother, because I'm a numbers guy, right? So if they found 10% of those surveys said the use of force is justified to prevent Trump from becoming president, let's just start with an easy number. Say that's, I don't know, a couple million people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Say a million people.
Numbers. Yeah.
Right. You only got to find a couple that are willing to go all the way.
As we saw, right?
Yes.
So again, we've seen this, whether it's a Hollywood celebrities or those of influence and power that are out there spewing hate. And then we wonder, how did this happen? Well, it happens because of stuff like this. Washington Post, and this came out in December of 2023. Yes, it's okay to compare Trump to Hitler. Don't let me stop you. And again, these are just, obviously you can go online and find all this you want, all this filth, and the fact that it was allowed to go. This was in June of 2024, the New Republic. Okay. That's last month, folks.
Well, and what gets me about that is, Trump was the only president not to start a war.
Thank you.
Right? He was the only one not to. He was trying to get other countries to do their part for NATO. And, so I've had a couple of friends, family members, bashing on Trump. I'm like, so you're pro-war.
Right.
And then I'd list off some things that go along those lines and be like, was that Obama or Trump? And it was always Trump. Of course, it was a setup, but but the media skews it so far this way, and then what do we have here that you found?
Yeah. So this is a speech that he gave recently. I think it was in April, but don't quote me on that. In a forceful condemnation of Trump, Biden warns that, quote, MAGA backers pose grave threat to democracy. And then, of course, we have to the right of that, MSNBC, and that was MSNBC article. Okay. We have the image of President Biden and then his remarks back in September of 2022. So again, I'm talking about seeds have been planted, watered, cared over, and here they are. And I'm going to read it. This is right off the White House website. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundation of our republic. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. Again, when he says they, the President of the United States is talking about 75 million plus Americans that voted for Donald Trump. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Got to be clear. He didn't say former President Trump represents a blah, blah, blah. He's saying they as a broad category. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, and the very soul of this country. But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. We are not bystanders in this ongoing attack on democracy. And folks, it is within our power. It is within our hands, yours and mine, to stop the assault on American democracy. So again, this is the kind of rhetoric that led to people getting their hands chopped off in Liberia and Sierra Leone, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
We got a lot of static or something there, Brother Will.
Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Better now?
There we go. Yeah, we go.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. So,
Michael Chitilli, what's he saying?
I think this is a great comment. I'm always perplexed. This type of media wouldn't exist without willing consumers. Absolutely right.
I'm
And then the
lapping it
question
up.
becomes the chicken or the egg. Are these
Mhm.
people really that wound up, or is what they're consuming adding to that? And I would, of course, argue that what they're consuming is adding to that. And that happens on both sides, to be fair.
Yeah, it does. Um, I just don't see the and again, I'm blinded by my confirmation bias, so I'm going to be completely candid and honest with you. I don't see this level of vitriol coming from the right. Yes, there is some. Don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but I did not see Trump saying that Hillary Clinton supporters pose a threat to our way of life and the Constitution, democracy.
Yep.
Um,
And let's remember in the lead up to the 2020 election, I can remember vividly. It was a Trump rally in Phoenix, and people were trying to drive in, and they were still a ways away. And anti-Trump protesters had blocked the road. They were kicking their cars, and
mhm,
people were turning around and going back home just to get away from the potential violence there.
mhm,
Had that been the other way, that would have been fascist, right?
yeah.
But because it was anti-Trump, it was people standing up, against fascism. Give me a
Yeah.
break, you know.
100%. And Alan Kelly, he talks about the put him in the crosshairs quote. We'll get to that here in a little bit because
Okay.
you're absolutely right. Tony says, how many FBI agents and CIs, confidential informants, did it take to create a false kidnapping plot against Governor Whitmer? What
And
does Don
boy,
say?
that one, when that broke, it was like, holy cow, right? And then we come to find out that it was just they found some real idiots and ginned them up into it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and Don says Biden recently said it was time to quote put Trump in the crosshairs as part of the speech he gave. Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that here in
Okay.
just a second. But yeah, so we planting the seeds for political violence. Step two is the radicalization of the useful idiots to violence. And this is from a book that my good friend Michael Gentili, who's on this morning, recommended for me to read. I read it 20-ish years ago. It's fantastic. If you haven't read it, I highly encourage you to read it. It's The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. And just breaking it down into a few different steps, the appeal of mass movements, the nature of true believers, what kind of characteristics of true believers within these movements, including their fanaticism, devotion, and willingness to sacrifice for the cause. And then the role of these mass movements play in society, the dangers of fanaticism. This is, if you want to understand how you can sweep up these kind of people that are willing to sacrifice their life and to kill for a cause, read this book. And I would submit humbly that it is the kind of rhetoric that we have seen the left lap up and spew out that has led to this useful idiot climbing a podium and doing it. So let's talk about this useful idiot for just a
All
moment. I
right.
don't want to give this guy a whole lot of life, but you do need to understand these people. So here's Thomas Crooks, the alleged shooter. Crooks, of course, it was quick to point out that he's a registered Republican, according to voting records. But and this is, I think, is the bigger one. He only participated in one state election. I don't know how he voted, but records show that he also made a $15 donation to Progressive Turnout Project, a Chicago-based political action committee that supports Democratic candidates for public office and claims to advocate for key Democratic constituencies, young people, minorities, low-income
Mhm.
people. So I'm like, let's go to Twitter and see what is on their Twitter feed the morning that this young man decided to kill President Trump. And here it is.
Okay.
I'll screen grab this, and here's what it says. This committee that he gave money to. And it says, it is simple, people. Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy, and another 4 years of him would be detrimental to our country. No ambiguity in that phrase. This
Right.
came out at 9 o'clock that morning that he decided to climb a ladder and kill President Trump. And of course, they're using President Biden's quote, the choice in this election is simple. Donald Trump will destroy our democracy. I will defend it. And again, if you're a kid that has you don't see a future for yourself.
Yeah.
From some of the people that were talking about him in high school, like he was bullied, he said alone, blah blah blah. This kid was ripe for the
Yeah.
pick, right?
Yep. For sure.
So here's a couple of quotes from Eric Hoffer from the book The True Believer. He says, the true believer, no matter how rowdy and violent his acts, is basically an obedient and submissive person. The fanatical believer is not conscious of his envy, malice, pettiness, or dishonesty. There is a wall of words between his consciousness and his real self. And I think that's important to understand.
Mm-hmm.
What do we have here? Comments?
Let's get a look here. Dr. Bosman, I have one job, and that's to beat Donald Trump. He's quoting Joe Biden here. Absolutely certain I'm the best person to be able to do that. So we're done talking about the debate. It's time to put Trump in a bullseye. So I see two things there that jump out at me. First, he wants to get away from the whole debate, right? Because we know that was a train wreck there, and put Trump in a bullseye. And that was something I was going to bring up here at the right time, and this may be it. Remember when Sarah Palin had the map with the bullseyes for congressional districts that they wanted
Everybody
to
went
target?
nuts.
Yes.
Yep.
And in that map, and her campaign was blamed when Gabby Giffords was shot by some idiot, right? We're not going to hear that now.
Yeah. And the Tina points out, when Trump would say these things like, it's a beautiful day outside. Oh, it's a dog whistle.
Yeah.
What's he saying?
Oh, hold on. I got to get my rifle. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, I see you said that. And I just, yeah.
But it seems like the left, they're not even dog whistling.
No.
Michael
I can hear that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Loud and clear, brother. What's Michael say?
He says his favorite conspiracy. You're stealing my thunder here, brother. But that's awesome. Good. Favorite conspiracy meme. Why wasn't the FBI in the roof? The CIA was already there.
Oh no! Oh,
yeah, that one was awesome. I saw that one too. So it was a twist on that, but yeah, that's an awesome. What's Don say there?
Oh, let's see here. Don says a registered Republican. Remember that they had a liberal movement to register as Republicans in order to try and beat Trump. I do remember that, Don. You're absolutely.
I had forgotten about that. You are absolutely correct.
Yeah. So let's talk about step 3, violence. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. I know we've probably seen this to death, but I think it's important to see it one more time. Johnny King is on from Kentucky. Let's go ahead and watch this one more time. 2 minutes and 11 seconds.
And that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Hold. When you're ready, on you. Ready? Move. Up. Move. Go. Up. Hawkeye's here. Move it to the stair. Get ready. We ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move? We're clear. We're clear. Come on.
Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down.
What's up?
Here's something that rings out to me, man. They talk about that President Biden says that he's an authoritarian and he's promoting. Notice what the crowd chants. They don't chant Trump, Trump, Trump. They're chanting USA. Now, of course, that can be spun. Well, it's a nationalistic fervor. I'm like, what's wrong with being proud of your nation? I never understood that. Have you?
No, I've never understood
patriotism.
that. Right, but their loyalty is to the party, not the country. So to them, that is a bad thing, right? It's that whole thing. I mean, you got that graphic I sent you. I don't know how accurate it is about the bullet path.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's accurate.
And it's boy, if he hadn't turned his head, and I can never remember. There's so much going on in that video. Did he um either turned his head to make a point or look at a teleprompter? And had he not turned his head,
That little
we
bit.
would probably be living in a different world right about now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say I'd be pulling him off life support today, because it would have took off the back of his head.
Yep.
And then here again is the tweet that everybody's referencing this morning. A screenshot here. It says, I have one job, that's to beat Donald Trump. I'm absolutely certain I'm the best person to be able to do that. So we're done talking about the debate. It's time to put Trump in a bullseye. So,
Oh yeah, like he hasn't been.
yeah, exactly. Thank you.
I mean, yeah.
This is a powerful photo, I thought, Will, and
Yeah.
most of the 13 folks watching live shooters will appreciate just how terrifying that image is of the
Mhm.
bullet whizzing past his head. I mean, again, we were half an inch from having a dead president, which is just, insane.
Yeah.
I remember, being, I think, in the 5th or 6th grade when they wheeled in the TV and we watched the assassination attempt on Reagan.
Yep.
Man, what a dark day that was, and here we are again.
Yep. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people in the country that don't appreciate what that would have meant and the downline consequences. First, I don't want to see any president or former president, no matter how much I dislike their politics, I don't want to see any of them killed or shot or anything.
Amen.
But during during an election for either candidate to be assassinated, there's the obvious turmoil. In this case, had this attack against Trump been successful, but also then who's the nominee?
I know.
Right? I mean, if we get into the logistics of it, who's the nominee? How does that happen? Is there something in the RNC or the DNC that covers that, or does it just become a free for all? And then what does that do to the whole political process? Is the new candidate, quote unquote, legitimate? Because there's no time to run a primary and then campaign. So is it the will of the people or the will of the party?
Well, I know what it should be. I know what it should be, but I tell you what, one side of the aisle seems to. Anyway.
Yeah.
Johnny King says Victoria's Secret has better coverage than the Secret Service. What does Tony say?
He says the left hates the country and loves the government. The right loves the country and hates the government. And
that sounds about right to me.
I would submit that to many on the left, especially the far left, the government is their religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so an attack on that is like an attack on Christ for a Christian.
Yeah. So. And Don, I have not read that. I will have to read it as soon as we get off today, Don. Thanks for sharing that. Alan says you can even see the impact spray on the previous video. Whoa. What does Will Parker say?
Says he never met a person who hated their country, who was willing to put on the uniform and willing to go in harm's way to protect it. Absolutely.
He's right.
Absolutely true.
So again, now we got step 4. In what does that say?
Ineffectual preparation and response. And I've got a few thoughts on this, but I want to hear what you have to say first. You did the hard work on this.
Well, there's not a whole lot of hard work here, guys. It's absolutely insane. I'm going to walk a close line here. A very good friend of mine who does a lot of training with this group of counter snipers. He said they brag that nobody can get within 1,000 meters of this guy. And like, here we are, you can see the position of the shooter relative to where Trump was, 137 meters. That is unacceptable. And I will tell you, and I've mentioned it on the show before, we were going to the NRA convention when Trump was running for office and he was about to arrive. And we were walking around the back because I didn't want to wait in this long caravan line of cars. So I'm like, well, hell, we're close. We're just maybe 300 meters away. So we'll just walk across the field. And this guy sees us and he's like, hey, you want to hop in the truck? And so he flashes a badge to the guy, and me and Seeklander are sitting in the truck with him. So he's been checked and vetted. The Secret Service let him in the back. They let us off, and we got, dude, I'm gunned up. I'm going to the NRA show. I'm carrying all kinds of shit. And because he had let us in the back, we were able to go. And when we popped out, we're right there in the Secret Service bubble where Trump's about to walk through the thing. And I see the counter snipers up on the roof, and I look at Mike and I'm going, oh, bro, we should not be here.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that before, but I think it's important because it just shows a pattern of lax security.
Yep.
And then you see something that happens like this, and you go, "What in God's name? How did this happen?" I just let's put that back up there, man, because I want people to
Yeah.
look at this. Even a child can tell this is unacceptable.
Yeah, and my oldest son and I have gotten into long range shooting a little bit, and I don't claim to be all that great at it. Um, but this last course we took was just a 2 day refresher, and on the morning of day two, we started with cold, no warm up anywhere else. We measured it with a reticle, 616 yards, and we were making headshots on a 4 inch by 4 inch target consistently. And hitting a human sized target was like child's play. Like, this isn't even fun after a while because it's just a given.
Exactly.
And it
So
wasn't with an AR platform with 223. It was a 6.5 Creedmoor, so much better long range round, all those sorts of things. But 135 yards, I mean,
mhm,
give me iron sights. I'll bet you money on that one all day long.
100%. So again, having done some PSD work myself, having been a cop and worked some of these type venues back in my younger professional days, again, this is unacceptable. Now, the Secret Service is in the business not of risk elimination, but risk mitigation. That's what they're doing. You can't eliminate all the risk; it's absolutely impossible. And as we'll see from some of the other slides that I've taken from, this is from Task and Purpose, who did a really good 17-minute video on here, and it gives a great lay of the land as far as where the suspected gunman's body was found, where the wounded rally attendees were. So it looks like he's shooting, almost had to shoot through bleachers to hit Trump. So that's how you had the gentleman who was killed and the two people wounded. We'll talk more about them here in a moment.
Awesome.
But the Secret Service, if you watch the response, they're not even able to get that lower elevated shot because they're looking at that ring of security is basically not covered. As a Marine back in the day, we would say, I'm going to cover this with direct fire, and the low spots in the terrain I'm going to cover with indirect fire, and the high spots I'm going to cover with direct fire. So, but this was a dead zone, basically, that maybe should have been covered by local law enforcement. I don't know who was responsible. I'm sure there'll be an investigation to uncover how this was allowed to happen. But let's take a look here. This is, I think somebody said there was potentially 18 elevated positions where you could see the stands.
Okay.
So if you notice from the video, the counter sniper team has to actually change their tripod and move it back. And he's making an adjustment there with his left hand so he can lower the elevation on that scoped rifle.
Okay.
That tells me they weren't ready for a shot that close.
That close, and then it makes me wonder, because that rifle is angled downward. Did the Secret Service guys had the higher ground there? So then the question becomes, why didn't they have eyes on this guy already? And there's been an argument made that if this guy slithered up the roof with the rifle hidden behind his body in some way initially, you wouldn't just shoot a person, some idiot crawling up a roof, right?
Exactly.
And I've also watched a video of this sniper that's on the tripod there. The first shot rings out towards Trump, and this guy, you can watch him jump up off the rifle and look, and then come back on scope.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's human. There's a shock factor there, of course, and no one can be faulted for being human. But the question becomes, why weren't there eyes on this? And we've all seen the interview with the guy who said he was yelling out to the cops in the Secret Service. There's a guy up there on that roof with a gun. Where's the proactiveness here?
Well, having again, as a police officer or as a Marine and some other things, having your finger on the trigger and removing that slack and taking that trigger all the way to the wall. I've done that a few times, and I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening today have done the same thing. And you've been on that trigger. I'm like, dude, if you move another muscle, I'm breaking this shot. And that's what I don't understand in this case. So let's say I think they saw him. And I think that let's go ahead and bring this up now. I guess it's a good time to chat about it. And that's this. This report came out yesterday. I'm sure probably most people have seen it. Local police officer confronted the gunman before the shooting. So evidently they got his attention. And what I read this morning, Will, because it wasn't clear yesterday, that
Mhm.
he got on the shoulders of another officer is what I read. I don't know if that's going to be true. We'll see. And looked over the thing, and the guy pointed a rifle at him, and he fell back, and that gave him time to shoot. I don't know the confusion of these kind of things. I mean, we talk about the fog of war, right? There's five
Yeah.
elements to the fog of war, and that's confusion and chaos and limited bits of information. So I'm giving a lot of leeway to this. You see a guy
Absolutely.
climbing up, and he's might be wearing urban camouflage, but he's got long hair. He looks young. This spidey senses are tingling. This doesn't feel right. But at the same time, maybe he's part of the law enforcement response. Let's go ahead and get the cops. So they're telling, hey, check this guy out. The counters, and I would imagine the police are on the radio. Are they on the same network that the Secret Service are on? You have a lot of those instances, man. I've been in
Yep.
combat and seen red tracers coming in, red tracers going out. I'm like, what the? We're shooting up 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines,
Yeah.
and thank God, everybody was buttoned up and nobody got hit. But these kind of things happen because they're on one frequency, we're on another. We can't talk to each other. We don't know. So maybe the local law enforcement couldn't relay the information. Hey, that we've been advised. We're checking it out. It looks like the counter sniper team saw the guy and he's watching him. He's watching him. He's watching him. But again, we just can't shoot somebody with a rifle because again, the counter sniper team is probably going, is he part of the local response? Is he some asshat security guy that's not supposed to be there? And
Yeah.
you just don't know. But what blows my mind is he should have been on the trigger with the slack taken out, ready to go. The minute the first round cracked, his head comes apart. That's what I don't understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, I proposed this to you and Dr. Fuller yesterday, and I will admit it comes from a position of complete ignorance. Okay. But my question was, why not a warning shot? And and Dr. Fuller explained there's no warning shots in federal law enforcement. I get it. Totally understand that. Got it. Check that. Okay. However, we are talking about protecting a former president of the United States. And I'll tell you what, if I'm up there where I'm not supposed to be crawling up there with a rifle, even if I'm part of the security detail, which I wouldn't be, but if I was doing that and somebody planted around a couple feet from me, I'd be like, yeah, I got that coming. So I don't know. I mean, it's maybe that'll change now. And I'm not saying we want rounds flying everywhere by any stretch of the imagination, but we are talking about protecting a presidential candidate, former POTUS. It's just one of those, and it's a little perfect world thing. I admit that. It's more spitballing than really advocating for it. But man, the consequences on the other side of that, had Trump not turned his head, are so huge. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we do warning shots, obviously, in combat, convoy security and things like that. You got a big sign in Arabic or Farsi or whatever, like, hey, stay back 100 meters, stay back. And if you come in closer, you throw water bottles and then you shoot over their head and do all these other steps before you go lethal. But this is continental United States.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can't.
But at what point does it go from, and I'm not saying, but what point does it go from this is CONUS to where it's I say this with air quotes, a combat situation, right? Because I don't know if it's going to get ramped up after this or not, but Secret Service has got some questions to answer here as to how they're handling things, and it's going to be a tough one. I would not want to be in that meeting. To have to explain why that roof was completely uncovered by anyone.
See, that's the thing. That's where I go back to, and it's the pre-work is the failure here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not even, the response is pretty good. I mean, they cover him quickly. It was kind of a Keystone Cops getting him the hell out of there. That whatever. This hasn't happened in 40 something years. You can do all the training you want, but it's different when people are really shooting at you. We've said that a million times on this show. So I'll give them some of that.
Sure.
And the response was decent. I mean, but why wasn't that covered? And like one of our viewers, I think it was Johnny, says, how do you get a ladder? You walk up with a ladder, and I think his rifle was covered in a blanket or something like that. Got a guy walking over there with a ladder. What?
And I've heard the same blanket thing. It's like it wasn't even broken down into a backpack.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
here's the ladder we're talking about. I don't know if you've seen that picture, Will.
I haven't actually. No, I've heard the ladder thing a number of times, but I have not seen this picture.
Yeah.
So
So this picture right here, you got the ladder, and then that little dot over there. There's something in the middle. I don't know if that's his backpack. I don't know if that's part of his clothing that's been cut away, but that's the rifle over there because there's actually another shot of this. So that the
Okay.
rifle is just left laying on the roof unattended, and I'm assuming they've got this whole block cordoned off now. It
yeah.
should have been Saturday, but
Mhm.
you know the Secret Service will take a look at that. But I mean, there you go, man.
Yeah.
He walked into this little alcove, put in a ladder, and up he went. I mean, again, this is not a trained guy. Can you imagine
Right.
if 4 or 5 highly motivated, well-skilled guy, Trump would be dead as fried chicken right now.
So
100%.
then, if we go back to that for a second, okay, just thinking as a person who likes to plan things, and maybe this guy was that, but I'm noticing those tall trees right there. Was that ladder? Did he pre-position that ladder days in advance? And
Good point. I don't know.
you know, either maybe it wasn't noticed or somebody saw, but like, hey, these look like industrial buildings. It's a ladder.
Yeah.
You know, so it'd be obviously there was some premeditation here, correct? Then the question becomes, how much did he plan this out well in advance? I mean, these rallies are not pop up events, and that he pre-positioned that ladder, let's just say days in advance, middle of the night or what have you. So that would explain. I mean, it's like he walked through the parking lot with a ladder the day of, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that would be really smart if that was his plan. You know, when he came to Louisville one time, when I forget which president it was, came to Louisville when I was the operations officer at the federal building, and he came to the federal building, whatever president it was, doesn't matter. But they blocked the 4-block radius off maybe a week or two in advance. Every single manhole cover was welded shut. No cars were allowed to be there. All the mailboxes and stuff like this were removed from that area, so nothing could be planted. There were guys stationed everywhere, counter snipers on the roofs all around the federal building and the federal courthouse, etc. So it's like, and then you see something like this.
Yeah.
But here's the problem I have right now. A guy in Florida was texting and driving, and he hit another car and killed a 9-year-old boy. He got 30 years in prison.
Wow.
Texting, distracted driving. Yeah, look it up. He wasn't drunk, wasn't under drugs, but the cell towers can say that at the moment of the impact, he was on his phone. 30 years, and the guy has a wife and kids, and he's going to die in prison. Yet this government doesn't hold people accountable when you have 13 service members killed at Abbey Gate, or we lose tens of billions of dollars in American hardware and treasure. And we replace the Taliban with the Taliban, and General Milley gets to retire with full military honors. Everybody, Secretary Austin keeps his job, etc. So I'm under no illusion that this current administration is going to do anything to hold anyone accountable for this massive failure. What do you think?
Oh, I agree completely. And it goes back to the government is their religion. And they'll be like, you know, this won't be publicly said, but it's like, well, if we do a full investigation and have all kinds of discipline and people get fired, then that's admitting that we're not the best. We're not perfect. And people will lose faith in that. And since that is the religion for many in the country, then they can't have them losing faith, because why would you reelect someone in charge of that religion when they can't run it right?
Yeah. It'd be like finding out Christ didn't walk on the water, or the stone wasn't rolled away to the folks that worship the government. It's just not going to work.
Yep.
So let's look at the next part. Step 5: mainstream media misinformation. And here is that. I hope everybody's seen it by now. Secret Service rushes Trump off stage after he falls at rally. Unbelievable. So here's some more misinformation. The Indiana Star and other USA Today outlets said, quote, Trump removed from the stage by Secret Service after loud noises startles the former president, end quote. The Washington Post wrote, quote, Trump taken away after loud noises at rally. Very specific that Politico decided to kick it up a notch by writing, quote, photo of bloody Trump fist bumping immediately spotlighted by his allies. Newsweek wrote an incredible headline since deleted, reading MAGA responds with outrage after Donald Trump injured at Pennsylvania rally. It's
And-
absolutely breathtaking amount of misinformation, disinformation. My
Yep.
God, man.
And then, when Trump raised his fist and yelled "fight," which wasn't the F word I thought he was yelling when I first watched that,
Mhm.
the at least at the is NBC and I believe ABC as well was saying, well, that's the wrong message to send. No, that's exactly the message to send.
Exactly.
And it was just like, my gosh, I mean, the man was just nearly killed, and you're being critical of something he says in the heat of the moment. And let's also give him credit. You know, a lot of people in the world would cower behind those Secret Service agents who were protecting them with their bodies, would want to cower behind that protection after that happened. And that was not his instinct.
Yeah. Speaking
So,
of that, I'm going to get to Michael's comment here in just a second, but I want to talk about cowering behind. I don't know why the podium wasn't one of those level 3 bulletproof podiums, bomb-proof, bulletproof podiums that they could get him down. Instead, it's this little slender, sexy design. Like, man, what are we doing? You take that podium everywhere he goes, and
yeah.
at least gives you some ballistic protection. My God, man.
Mhm.
Of course, Michael Gentili talks about diversity, equity, inclusion, focus, Secret Service director, and that's true, folks.
Yes.
That's not
Their goal
hyperbole.
is 30% female agents by 2030.
And
How
what did
about
we
we just
see,
hire some badasses that can kill bad people? How about
bro?
that? And I don't care what gender they want to be, pretend to be, or whatever. Hired people can do the job.
I want to talk about this real quick. So, have you seen the movie 300?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, right? And I would imagine most folks watching us today have already seen it. Fantastic movie. If you haven't, check it out. It's a very stylized depiction of the Battle of Thermopylae with King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans. But remember that little gimpy Spartan? He
Hmm.
wants to be a part of the warrior class, but he can't hold
Yep.
his shield and protect the other Spartans. And
Yep.
Leonidas does a great job. Like, hey man, I understand you want to help, but can you raise your shield here? You see, and he explains to the fella, like, this is why it's important to be an X height. You have to be able to cover your brother to the right or the left. So when I see these little 5'2" females trying to cover a 6'4" president or
Hmm.
former president, it's like, what are we doing?
Yep.
MacArthur on the deck of the Missouri when the Japanese contingent came to surrender, he told, if you're below 6 foot, get off the flight deck, because he wanted to give the impression of these towering Americans looking down on the Japanese. We do the same thing. You can't be on the Marine Corps silent drill team unless you're at least 6 foot tall. There's no DEI
Right.
to that. And they were
Yep.
talking about the silent drill team, something that just flips rifles and makes
Right.
America look good. And here it is. We have the security of, and again, I have 2 daughters, guys. I'm not hating on women. If you're a 6 foot tall woman and you're capable and competent, that's great. But if you watch the video, there's one overweight female who's probably 5'2". She tries like 5 times to reholster a firearm, can't do it, and then she puts it in the other hand and back to the other hand, and it's just, again,
Yeah.
Keystone Cops, man.
Yep. And to that, I mean, I'm a 5'7" on a tall day. I'm 5'8". You don't want me trying to protect someone like Trump who's 6'4". I can't cover him.
All right.
I'm disqualified from the job. Okay, cool. Find me something else.
Right. Tony says, come on, man. She was the director of PepsiCo. I did not know that.
Oh my
For some
gosh.
reason, it doesn't surprise me.
No, not at all.
So this is a step 6, the final act in our thing here, and that is act surprised when it happens. Call for calm and shift the blame. President Joe Biden called for national unity at a short White House news conference Sunday and said he spoke with Trump briefly on Saturday night and, quote, I'm sincerely grateful that he's doing well and recovering. Biden also said he would address the nation from the Oval Office. So let's take a look at here.
Okay, let's back up just a second there, brother. Because he says, I'm sincerely grateful that he's doing well and recovering.
Mhm.
There's people in the world who I think are evil. You can check off the boxes. Bin Laden when he was alive. I would not be grateful that Bin Laden was doing well and recovering.
Great point.
So does Biden really think he's evil and a threat to the country? Or is this the truth?
Yeah, you don't get to have it both ways.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to that whole misinformation you were talking about. You did in the angle of the MSM, but it comes from the quote unquote leadership as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Don says she went from guarding Doritos to guarding the president. What's Alan saying?
It says the one agent couldn't hardly get her firearm secured into her holster. Her facial expression with pursed lips, which is the indicator of fight or flight, borderlining on flight. And I'll tell you what, this is one that drives me nuts. And I know we've got more than a few law enforcement officers here, including you, Rich, and former law enforcement officers. But this is one thing that drives me crazy when people go, "Oh yeah, I know how to shoot. My uncle was a cop. He taught me." Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's go shooting. Bring your money. We'll see how
Exactly.
this goes. You know.
Yeah.
So that whole thing drives me nuts. And this was front and center. And hey, we're all human, adrenaline, et cetera, et cetera. But Greg, I can never pronounce his name right. Elferts. He did a review on your book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he brought up a great point that someone should have corrected her because she's a shorter person. Body armor was down very close to her waistline because of that. Had she had a slight drop or offset on that holster, wouldn't have had as much issue with that. So where's her leadership saying, hey, we need to address this ahead of time? Or where is it on her if she's had this issue to seek out an answer to that, whether it be from leadership or just internet searches?
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that real quick, and I'll give you some inside baseball. Mike and I and a couple other dudes were given a contract to train some military folks that needed to know how to fight inside of an airplane. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So we went out to the range where we were doing the training, and when the government vans arrived with the students in there, they also showed up with the stuff in the armory. And at that point, they were issued whatever SIG or whatever they were shooting and a brand new holster and stuff like that. I'm like, what is this holster? I won't say the manufacturer, it's absolute trash. And nobody had trained with it before. And they're like, well, you guys on your letter of instruction said we needed to have X number of holsters. So who bought them? So some procurement guy who knows nothing about firearms said, okay, I need 48 holsters for this training event. Goes on Amazon or wherever, this government credit card, 48 holsters, ships them in, puts them in a box and ships them down there. And it's like, so that's the level of thought put into a lot of this shit that you see. And I know that sounds crazy, but if that was one data point, I would say, well, okay, that's not always the case. But I had another one with a high level group that I was helping Mike with, and they all showed up with Phobos holsters, and I'll put them on blast. It's absolute trash.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm like, what is this junk? And I heard the same damn story. The procurement people that put the class together and all this other stuff, and the ops personnel that got it, they said, well, we need so much holsters. These were part of a government contract that we could go in and buy them immediately. And they did, and it was junk. So this kind of shit happens, man. Yeah. And they're not shooters, man. They're just not.
Yeah. See, and then my question becomes, where's the leadership for whatever that group is of gunfighters going, whoa, no, hey, time out. No, we're not using that holster. We're not using that equipment. We're not going to use brand new stuff because brand new stuff breaks. We're going to use this stuff. Where's that leadership pushing back?
Yeah.
And then what other stupid stuff are they not pushing back against on top of that, whether it's policies, procedures, rules of engagement, et cetera?
Get a list, buddy. I'm telling you, it's a lot. And Don, I believe Don is a retired Army officer. Don't quote me on that, Don, but I believe you are. If that's right, sir, just give me a head nod or something. He said, but it's a government issue. It's got to be good. Not. Yeah. Joseph says, what do you think the motive was? Joseph, I would refer back to, if you look when he submitted that $15 to that PAC for left-leaning causes. If I go off that and you think this is a 19-year-old young man that doesn't make a whole lot of money, and yet he found some way to put money into this PAC, who thinks Trump is evil, I think that's all we need. And then you add on top of that, I believe it was Alan Kelly that said, remember, these leftists were told, go and register Republican, so that you can vote in the primaries and things of this nature. I think I think we're getting closer to a motive. It remains to be seen. But yeah, Don says, "Yep, retired Army." So I don't know. What do you think? Anything else to add on the motive?
No, nothing at all. You know, a useful idiot, as you said, and you know, will it be in the parlance of, you know, the ISIS people? Is it self motivated? Probably, but certainly
Mhm.
plenty of motivation from mainstream media and you know, a lot of political people.
Yeah. So on the final thing of acting surprise and shifting blame and stuff, this Oval Office psyop, whatever it was, gaslighting attempt. If you're awake, you know this is absolute bullshit. I mean, pardon
Hmm.
my French to the 14 folks watching us live, but this wanting bipartisanship and I was waiting for him to say at some point, like, look, I've used some incendiary language.
Yeah.
I'm asking for calm on everybody, including myself. I have to temper my own words and thoughts and
Hmm.
feelings to this person and to my opponents. Never did that. He gaslighted the whole damn thing as if he's been just
Yeah.
So look at this. I love this guy calling him out. Says President Biden, July the 8th, 2024, quote, "We're done talking about the debates. Time to put Trump in a bullseye. Defend that. Go ahead. Try to defend that rhetoric after what we all witnessed with Trump coming within a centimeter of being assassinated."
And absolutely right. And to your point about how President Biden could have done that address, that level of self accountability requires leadership,
Amen.
and that is woefully lacking. I'm sure had that been proposed, some political advisor had been like, "No, never
No, we
admit
can't do
fault,"
that.
versus what the country wants. And let's face it, Trump doesn't admit when he's wrong. Okay, but what the country wants is somebody will stand up and go, "Yeah, I screwed that up. My bad.
Mhm,
I learned."
mhm,
That level of humility just doesn't happen in our political environment.
mhm. No, it doesn't. And yeah, Trump admitting he's wrong. About the closest you'll ever get to him admitting he's wrong when somebody calls him out on the debate stage. You got to go like,
Yeah.
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 When they said he had sex with a porn star or something, he goes, he didn't.
I
He
think that's
didn't.
well established. Yes.
Yeah. At this point, you might as well own it.
Yep.
But no,
Exactly.
this level of gaslighting is just absolutely disgusting. But I want to close out today with talking about this absolute hero, Corey
Yes.
Comportero, and I hope I didn't butcher your name, sir. He was killed covering his family with his own body. I mean, what an absolute warrior! Was a
Yes.
fire chief. I mean, this guy was the best of us. A
Yes.
father of two daughters, and on the right here, his daughter Allison just showers him with praise, love, and affection for the man that he was. I mean, this chokes me up every time I think about this guy because this
Yeah.
is the best of us right here.
Yep. Yep. This is America right here.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. The two other Americans wounded, Semper Fi to David Dutch, 57, of New Kensington, Pennsylvania. And David is the commandant of his Marine Corps League. So he's a former Marine, Semper Fi brother. And then we have James Copenhaver, 74. They're both in stable condition. Dutch underwent 2 surgeries after being shot in the liver and the chest. I mean, with a 5.56, God almighty, man. And
Yeah.
here's the thing. We're almost done with today's show. I know Will has a heart out here in about 10 minutes. This David Dutch, he's peaceably assembled with other folks,
Mhm.
exercising his First Amendment right. This guy is a former or retired Marine. We don't know at this point. And here he is getting shot on American soil
Mhm.
over somebody who hates his guts for who he is and the party that he aligns himself with. Man, well, what in
Yeah.
the hell is going on?
Yep. And you know, sadly, my concern with this is that either this will motivate people on whichever side of the aisle, right, to amp this up, retaliate, whatever it might be. I'm not saying this is the trigger that spirals us into civil war, but it's another notch on the way there.
Yeah.
You know, and if the media tries to not cover up, but tries to minimize this
Yeah.
because of who was attacked, well, then that's just going to erode the faith in the media even more, if that is even possible.
Mm.
And that takes us further down that road, right?
Yeah. Tony asked about this, and I was reticent to put it out here, but those of you that know, for the last year or so, I have had my 10-point scale. And if you go back to that show, you know what 10 points means. And here we are. I'll go over some of the points that we've got so far. The extreme MAGA Republican speech of September 2022. I've already referenced it in today's show. I said if the 45th or the 46th president would be indicted, I would add points for that. Well, guess what? The President Trump was indicted, 91 felony charges in 4 different jurisdictions. So that was 2 points. You can see here what other things would get points. If they gave the 45th president a gag order while he's trying to run for office, I said I would give that 3 points. Ultimately gave it 1 because I felt that the 2 that he is currently under were pretty narrow in scope, and they've let him get by with some things. So it deserves some points. And again, I wrote this before these things happened.
Yes, you did.
With the exception of the extreme MAGA Republican speech. That was the one that kind of got my attention. I'm like, whoa, the language here is shit that you only hear out of petty third world dictators. You don't hear American presidents calling their former political opponents enemies of the state.
And the visuals, the red coloring. I mean, that was like something out of a bad movie.
It was Orwellian. Who the hell thought that was a good idea? Fuck God. Clinton's formal deprogrammed Trump supporters speech. I don't know if it's on The View or where I gave that 1 point. Because again, it's just a data point.
Yeah.
And then you could see some of the other things here: firearm confiscation, gold confiscation, implementation of digital currency. The 45th or 46th president sentenced and jailed was 6 points. Really, that should probably get 3 because he already has been found guilty of 34 felonies. So that probably deserves something.
Yeah.
Certain black swan events probably should have gave some for these other things, but 45th president disqualified in the state ballot. They tried to do this in 3 different jurisdictions. I think it was all thrown out. He's going to be on the ballot in all 50 states, but still, just the fact that they tried to do that, I gave that 2 points. Yep. And then 45th or 46th or Speaker of the House SCOTUS assassination would be 6 points. I gave it 3 points, obviously, because it was an attempted assassination. So as of this morning, we are at 11 points. Now, will I enact my plan? I don't know. We got to have some discussions about that here as a family. But I think the writing is on the wall that nothing good is coming out of this. We'll see if the temperatures come down a little bit. We'll see how the Republican National Convention this week in Milwaukee plays out, Will, to see what this is feeling like. But man, I tell you what, if come November the 5th, things are not better. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, you bring up the point, will this ratchet things down? And this is a data point. This is, one idiot. It was a congressman out of Alabama or Mississippi. I forget which one. One of his staff members put out a tweet that I'm paraphrasing, something like, "Get better training next time so you don't miss."
Right.
Now that person has been fired, as they should be. And he was like, the congressman was like, "No, this is not what we represent. This person's no longer with me," so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But even Biden's calls for civilities only lasted a couple hours before some other politician started ratcheting things up again. It's like they can't help themselves.
Yeah.
And it's,
and
I don't see it going down long term. A few hours here and there, maybe a day or two after something really bad happens, but that's it. It's going to come right back.
I think so too. And if it doesn't, to Alan and Brian's point here, they're both talking, I think, relative to like crazies and copycats and all these other people that see they can get some notoriety by trying to take a shot at Trump, and seeing that security isn't as tight as probably a lot of the folks that wanted to take a shot at the former president. That's like, oh, well, maybe I have a chance here. What can I do?
Mm-hmm. And then, you got the people, let's look at the Nashville school shooter is the one that first pops to mind. And a lot of the other ones, the one down in Florida, looking for, is this sick, quote, the new high score, right? They're looking to make their mark on society and be famous by doing those school attacks or other mass shootings. Well, wouldn't the ultimate high score being take down a presidential candidate?
Absolutely.
So if you get a plethora of copycats doing this, at what point does it just become overwhelming to any force, including the Secret Service?
Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right. What was John Hinckley Jr., the guy that shot Reagan? The reason for his assassination attempt was to impress Jodie
Jodie
Foster.
Foster.
Like,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
that's your point, right?
Yeah. Because yeah. So you take these people who are crazy, and point them in the right direction.
And
Wrong
remember, we
direction.
still have not seen the manifesto of that trans woman or whatever it
Hmm.
was that shot up those children in the church.
Yeah.
They still will probably never release that damn thing.
No, because it again, it's political, right?
Yeah. And Tony has a point. Says, when is Trump sentencing? I don't know. Hopefully not until 2025. But he has a point there. I mean, that could escalate the numbers. And then finally, I want to get to Don's comment. And then I know you got a few minutes left where we got to get you off. But it says, if you've made your plan during rational and sober reflection, be careful rationalizing the events and balking at your plan. Man, you are right, brother.
Yep. Yep.
You are right. Like I said, we're gonna have some conversations here at the Brown compound and decide what's going to be the right thing for us to do. But yeah, that's well said.
Yeah,
Anything else?
absolutely.
Any final comments or thoughts this morning, Will?
No, I just pray for our country. I mean, this
Yeah.
is this. I fear this could spiral. I don't really see it happening. I'm not getting that gut feel out of it. But
Mhm.
boy, if there's one more event, and God forbid, two more events, I could see a scenario where it could spiral rapidly.
Mhm.
And we'll have to see what happens. The RNC, obviously they've known about for a long time. There should be preparations there, right? But
Yeah.
when Trump goes for his sentencing or whatever, I mean, yes, obviously these cities can be locked down, right?
Mhm.
But are they going to be? Are they going to be, or is that just a ripe opportunity for another sick, twisted individual?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I here's my concern. I don't see anybody being held accountable for this gross negligence that occurred on Saturday. If it was a past administration, we would definitely see it. This administration, we're not
Yeah.
going to see it. So that's just going to be one more data point for those on the right to go, look, no, he's been held accountable. Well, nobody's been held accountable for a
Yeah.
long time with this administration. Again,
Mhm.
if you look at some of the things that are going on at the state level, it's like, man, you're getting more than enough accountability. But at the
Mhm.
federal level, no. So RNC starts today, I believe, and runs through Thursday or Friday. I can't remember.
Okay.
So I'm going to be tuning into that to see how that goes, see what the temperature of that is.
Yeah.
Mark over in Australia says, excellent show. Thank you, guys. Don says, great show, guys. Thanks for the effort. What does Will say?
Um, I can see Klaus
Hmm.
Schwab rubbing his hands in an evil laugh. Oh, thanks for that
Mm.
mental picture there, buddy.
Yeah,
So,
Alan Kelly says, great show. Thanks, guys. Be ready. Things might get crazy. Yeah, guys, stay
and
strapped. I mean,
and to that point, and I'm glad Alan brought it back to that. That stay ready thing. If as these political rallies, events happen, I mean, this was kind of middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, right? So
Mhm.
if you live anywhere near where one of these events is happening, and the worst case happens, no matter which side of the political aisle it is, be ready for things to be locked down, not be able to, know, obviously it's your home area. You're going to know how to get around an area, but be ready for that possibility that things could go haywire in your own area where one of these rallies occurs.
Yeah. And on that note, take us out, brother.
The fight is coming. Be ready.